And let's bring up Seth Shapiro to take us through the new connected TV platforms.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, my dear. So, you know, when you do these things, you often have prep calls before them, and we had one late last week. And I think I just looked up and an hour and a half had gone by. That never happens. So I'm really looking forward to this one. And I guess the real topic is the living room television experience broadly defined. How is it changing? And first of all, big ups to John, who actually is the one who put most of these people together. But we have some great perspectives. So CE, so consumer electronics, represented by an executive from that space, a network. Over the top, I guess, is sort of broadly defined what Tom is about, and then user experience across platforms is sort of John's perspective. So really quickly, let's let these folks introduce themselves, and then we'll get to it. We'll start with Wendell.
Hi, I'm Wendell Wenjen with LG Electronics, part of our San Jose Innovation Development Group, and I'm responsible for our initiatives and business development in interactive TV and advertising platforms.
Hi, I'm John Gilles. I'm Managing Director of A Different Engine. A Different Engine is an agency that designs and develops apps across many screens. We focus primarily on connected TVs, but also develop for tablets, phones, and set-top boxes. We have customers like Showtime and Starz, among many others, and happy to be here.
My name is Jodi Robinson, and I head up the Internet and Interactive Technology division within Starz, and what that means is that I set the technology roadmap for our Internet, ITV, and broader advanced services projects, most notably launching our Play platform, Starz Play and Encore Play, which we're excited to talk about today.
Great.
My name is Tom Morgan. I'm founder and CEO of a new company called Net2 TV. We're focused on building free ad-supported branded channels for smart devices and working with primarily the large television media buyers on how to buy across and make this a real business. I worry about revenue.
And indeed he does. So let's sort of start with the sort of crisis and opportunity aspect of this. So maybe this is something for Jodi to start with. I mean, so you've got the proliferation of content across multiple platforms, which from one perspective, sort of the old perspective, could potentially be a headache, right? You've got fragmentation potentially on it, but then again, there are a tremendous number of opportunities. So, from the perspective of a premium network, how do you see the opportunities here? And I guess also, where has it created some headaches?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, certainly, we're charged with understanding our consumer and, appreciating that they're now taking control of their viewing experience in their own environment. And that includes connected TV platforms as well as mobile devices. So, it's our job to meet them wherever they're going to be with our excellent content. And that's not as easy as it seems, right? So we've got the fragmentation of not only the Android platform, which is well documented, but also now the connected TV space, both on the CE devices and IP-connected set-top boxes. So, as we want to add value and focus on adding value to our premium subscribers, it's important that we enable access via these platforms, but we also have to understand that it's still a very nascent market, and be flexible and be capable of adapting to wherever our consumers are going.
Did you want
to? Well, I mean, I think the only observation I would make is that we're seeing that if you buy a new TV today, it's 42 inches or bigger. You get it home and you plug it in, you're going to see apps. You'll see, of course, the ubiquitous Netflix app. You'll see things like Starz, and I think it's interesting to look at how those apps are going to be used by the content owners. What we're seeing is that content owners who have rights restrictions, that cable networks that have rights restrictions are not going to be able to distribute long-form episodic programming. So they're going to be doing things that are more about marketing sorts of experiences to drive engagement with their brands. But where I think it's getting really interesting is that content owners who don't currently have cable networks, so sort of internet brands or other vertical interest brands like magazines that maybe have a lot of HD content actually can use these apps as a distribution platform to get into the digital living room, which sort of makes an end run around cable. I think there's also going to be a third category of experiences we're seeing, which is really around program synchronous applications. So while you're watching TV, using the app platform, you'll be able to have sort of what might be called classic interactive TV experiences, where you're actually able to interact with program synchronous applications. So sort of three big buckets of experiences across these platforms.
Great. So from a revenue perspective, Tom, how do fragmentation and scalability meet up?
Yeah, I got a call at 6:15 this morning from a television media buyer in New York. He said, "Where do I get the ads? Where do I, how can I make a buy? And who has them?" And I said, "Well, what kind of ads are you looking for? Are you looking for, the display EPG ads that sit within the upper structure of the App Store? Are you looking at iAd type in-app ads, or are you looking at interstitials?" And this media buyer happened to be a TV buyer. He goes, "No, I want TV, interstitial TV, good quality, television-like buy. I'm in the television business, so how do I roll up enough inventory to make it interesting for my big checkbook base?" And this is one of the major top 10 television buyers in the United States. I said, "Well, past basically Hulu and Crackle as being interstitial dynamic buys outside of TV everywhere kinds of C3 loads and things like that, it's very hard to find. You can find, Wendell's, the stuff Wendell does with Yumi on the EPG and the rest, and that works and it gets going towards apps and sites and everything else. But these people wanted TV ads. So it depends on who your buyer is, what their objective is, where they want to buy and what they're accustomed to buying. Fragmentation has to give way to consolidation. There's still an M in CPM, and M is all I care about.
Cool. Just in thinking about this over the course of the morning, it feels like every year at this event, there's some issue that sort of looms. So one year it might have been, the launch of the App Store or DVR a long time ago, but it really does feel now like the real question is how you guys play in. How does the advent of connected and smart TVs as the new player in this sort of ecosystem and the final chain potentially, because that's the way that people are going to consume a lot of this stuff, how do you guys weigh in on all of this stuff? I mean, so what are the opportunities and the things that you guys try to work through as you define that? Yeah,
we're seeing a lot of interest from consumers and buyers of TVs for smart and connected TVs. Today, about 60% of our product lineup is a smart TV that has applications and App Store recommendations and search, and the portion of the market that is buying these connected TVs continues to increase. So I think from the consumer side, there's a lot of value, and the value is really there because there's more and more interesting content, not only movies and television shows, games, informational services. And we see it as our job is to make sure there's a lot of interesting content, of course, for the users of the connected TV, but for the content owners, whether they be over-the-top types of new kinds of programming that's not currently being distributed through pay TV networks, as Tom is doing, or more traditional programmers like Starz or basic cable programmers, or even the pay TV operators themselves. We see the connected TV as being an enabling platform for them to deliver really compelling kinds of services and experiences to their audience. So for operators, there's work going on to integrate into the connected TV the set-top box functionality, so you can watch TV without having a set-top box, and that's hugely advantageous to them from an OpEx standpoint and CapEx as well. For content owners like Starz or basic cable, the connected TV is a way of distributing some of their content on a on-demand basis with authenticated TV everywhere types of systems. Also, it's a way of producing interactive content that can be delivered synchronously. So I think there's a huge number of new opportunities that we're just starting to get into, and we're really excited about being kind of an open platform that enables many of these.
So from your perspective, you're designing experiences or the presentation layer and the engine for game consoles, for over-the-top boxes, for actual for consumer electronics companies. How do you see the landscape?
Well, I think it's interesting because I think Tom's right. I think the ad-supported content is nascent because the platform for serving ads isn't really in place. But where we're seeing a lot of demand right now is for subscription services. I know we're working on at least 4 projects where you would pay a small fee per month to get sort of vertical interest kinds of programming. So HD content, and for example, for yoga, so you can do yoga at home in your living room, and subscription fee, it would be a lot less expensive than going to a yoga class. Home fitness, where you can do home fitness sorts of things like people do with the Zumba or P90X, delivered, but with the ability to take classes from instructors and even have biotelemetry like heart rate monitors, pulse, and in vertical interest areas like surfing or fashion, where probably doesn't warrant a whole cable channel, but if you're really an avid enthusiast for that vertical interest area, you can get that through a subscription service. I think ad-supported is going to come a little bit later.
Cool. So, I mean, one thing that would be interesting to talk about would be the nature of how content offerings are changed given all the proliferation of platforms. So as you have the ability to target specific verticals or specific demos, there are services that maybe make sense that wouldn't necessarily have made sense as full cable networks, adding another incremental another carriage fee to the package. And it sounds like, I mean, so Exercise was the one that Comcast originally placed something behind. I think Exercise TV, was it?
Yes.
As a VOD thing. So what do you see? I mean, and you've sort of worked this from both sides. You've worked towards aggregating network content, but you've also worked with more niche and presentation of new content.
I spent a year working on a virtual MSO project. I'll just, who I was working for, but I'll leave it not public. But and it is eminently doable. You're going to see it. But the big problem in the carriage-based world is basically with retrans coming from ABC and Fox, picking up $1.25 with markup. That's going to put pressure on the basic tier, the basic carriage funds. The renegotiation of all the sports contracts is further escalating the sports rights marketplace. And then you have Jeff Bewkes and Moonves standing up and saying, we want more of the carriage pie because our ratings are warrant us getting more, kick out the small networks. So there's heavy pressure in the carriage world to flush some of the smaller, what I call nickel nets, things 5 cents and below in carriage, flush them out, and then things coming up from underneath, trying to get into the carriage pool. I mean, other than Glenn Beck TV getting a deal, that's about it. So coming up and saying, I'm going to become a carriage, X1 network on Comcast, I don't know if I believe that. So then you have to see then, is it independent subscription models, and does that scale? But I was at early AOL, and we didn't have ads until we had 10 million customers. So there were no ads in AOL for the first 2.5 years of its life. Compared to now, it's amazing. But the problem is that you have to have scale. So if you put a subscription fee up even for a yoga or something like that, then you're further going to degrade or retard how fast advertising kicks in. So it's a real interesting chicken-egg trade-off. Do you move to premium model where Starz is and doing a great job with these vertical markets, or do you just try to get scale, and then how do you roll up enough scale to get to the 10 to 20 million screens? And keep in mind also, we don't talk households in the smart TV world, we talk screens. There's no such thing as an LG household, but they're a major player within that, so we have to roll up cross-device. So there's a bunch of logistics of getting to scalability, the standardization of interstitial work, there's a whole bunch of infrastructure work that needs to be put in place.
Yeah, I think you're right, Tom, that for any of these kinds of services that are being delivered that are ad supported, scale is critical. And connected and smart TVs have been in the market now for only a couple of years.
Yeah.
But the uptake of connected and smart TVs, both at the point of purchase, is growing. So I think display search 2 years ago was seeing about 17% of TVs purchased were connected in smart TVs. Today, closer to 33%, so that's a significant increase. And in 2015, they're forecasting about 2/3 in the U.S. So that's a tripling of market share. And when you couple that with the fact that TVs, the life cycle of the TVs now have dropped a bit to about a little over 6 years, and so you do have a replacement cycle, the compounding effect that we have, the 250 million TVs or so in the U.S., we're going to see that start to turn over. And we'll get to the collectively for the industry, in the tens, dozens of millions of units in a couple of years.
And you guys are to be commended. LG's been doing work with a Smart TV Alliance and trying to get standardization and scale within the Smart TV CE side. That is great work. They've got to keep on driving that. We need those business practice standards.
Yeah, standardization for a lot of this, standardization that makes sense is an important thing to do, and I think you need to select what points of standardization really do make sense for the industry. But LG was a leader in forming a group called the Smart TV Alliance, along with Philips in Europe and Sharp and Toshiba, to create a standard app SDK so that you can write a Smart TV application and have it portable across different devices.
Well, go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just going to say that standardization is actually critical, particularly for the TV everywhere world, where we're trying to create uniform experiences. We're trying to get technology out of the way, right? Consumers should never understand what DRM is. Consumers should never understand what authentication is, or how complex it is to actually authenticate, your cable operator password, versus, your email password. Consumers should not have to understand these things, and we should not have to build custom experiences for every television, every device, every mobile platform, because that simply does not scale in terms of an ROI perspective. So, we're charged with trying to figure out how to satisfy the largest percent of our subscribers by building the fewest number of platforms.
Right.
And the more that we can consolidate, and with your help, Wendell, that's going to make us a lot more successful in allowing access for our consumer base.
I mean, it's certainly a pain point for you, and definitely a pain point for John that has to go implement all these different platforms. And I know he's done work on ours, but we see that. We think there's going to be convergence in terms of an application framework around HTML5, and there'll be some commonality between mobile and TV-based applications at kind of a high level.
So I wanted to address the scale question really quickly, though. I think there's a couple answers around scale. One is that you have some of these smaller platforms like Roku and Boxee, and then larger platforms like LG and Samsung, of course, and the Yahoo platform and some of the other connected TV platforms. But in this category, we also see a really large footprint from Xbox, which is one of the connected devices. Xbox Live is somewhere in the low 40 million, so 42 million, which is kind of a magic number of households. Video consumption is actually past game playing as the number one use of an Xbox. So Xbox Live apps are an early example of driving scale. The other thing I'd say is that when you're creating connected device experiences for some of the most popular shows in television, and we are working on some of the most highly rated shows on TV right now, that is what's going to drive consumer interest. When you can do things with the shows you already love, I think that'll get people picking up their remote control and actually starting to interact with the content. And we're already seeing that going into the marketplace in early next year.
That's sort of a great segue. So interactive TV was this notion that we all lived through painfully, and then one day it was sort of here, right? I mean, second screen tablets and the improvement of an online experience really has created this kind of opportunity. So from your different perspectives, what are the interesting things going on? I mean, Starz has a long history in innovating. Vongo was one of the early sort of on-demand consumption platforms online. Obviously, you did some really groundbreaking licensing deals. Now you're launching these new services. What interests you when you design these new services to hit scale for your customers?
Yeah, I mean, Starz is a premium network, so we have, we don't have all the complexities of ads or trying to monetize. It's very simple for us. We're trying to add value to attract and retain our subscribers, right, through our operators. And the way you do that is by getting out of the way of the content, right? So the most important thing, the only reason consumers are coming to us, the only reason consumers are firing up these new applications and buying these devices is to actually consume content. So we have to make sure that our content is great, and of course it is. And then you have to make the experience that is something engaging and more interesting to them than their operator-controlled set-top box environment. And I hesitate to say that decorating that experience with interactive features is the right way to go. I think the jury is still out a little bit in terms of how we bring an interactive experience to a primary viewing experience for the consumer. And we don't want to detract from what's important, which is, and we're in the business of scripted, dramatic and theatrical dramas, so that we can't detract the user from what's most important, which is in consuming and becoming a fan of that content. Now that said, we appreciate that there is an opportunity to make that experience more engaging and more immersive. It's just a balance. We have to make sure that we're putting that in the right place. We think it's the second screen, not the primary screen. But how you do that is important. I think we'll look to the consumer data and do a lot of testing on that to make sure we're not doing damage.
Did you?
So I'll weigh in a little bit on that. So about 12, 18 months ago, I think the real hot buzzword was second screen, people using the iPad in front of the big screen and the TV, and that's how interactivity would happen. I think the bloom is off the rose a little bit with that, just because we've observed the consumer behavior is that most people, when they're sitting with their iPad in their living room, are doing nothing to do with what's on the TV. They're engaged in parallel tasks like emailing and on Facebook or playing fantasy sports while they're watching Dexter. And I think the real opportunity with the interactivity on the primary screen is that this will be very directed and focused on special use cases. And so it won't be about parallel tasks like Facebook. You'll be watching the football game and playing your fantasy sports app at the same time, or watching CNBC and looking at your stock portfolio that's personalized to you. So I don't think there's going to be interactive graphics across every TV show, but I think there's going to be some very powerful use cases, and we can be sure that they won't be about parallel tasks. So I'm pretty excited about the opportunities for single screen interactivity. Having said that, I still think there's some great applications of two screen, and so I'm not completely bearish on that.
So that's an interesting point. In terms of monitoring what users are doing, so in the old days we had a limited amount of information flowing back from cable providers or from Nielsen or something. Now that the floodgates have opened to some extent, there's a lot more data available. Advent of big data, how does that change the game? All of the data that's out there. Do you want it?
Yeah. What's really interesting, I went through the VOD wars. I started a company called Black Arrow that's Comcast and now Time Warner Cable's VOD ad system. And one of the interesting things about that world is the operators desire to not pass enough data to the programmers because of channel sales conflict. 40% of the local ad sales team out of a carrier sells ads to local car dealers, and if all of a sudden ABC or NBC can zone an ad and start regionalizing and get into that business, you run into some fairly interesting control of consumer and advertiser relationship. That said,
so in terms of the network potentially taking ownership of that relation away from the MSO, or
in this new world, things like age, gender, and zip-based dynamic ad insertion based on even the C3 loads out of Nielsen will occur and is already occurring. I ran an interview with a guy named Rick Mandler from ABC last week at TV Next, and for the first time they talked publicly about rolling up their ABC.com and Hulu inventory as part of their upfronts, as part of their guarantees on audience buys and measurements with cross-platform measurement. And the pain they're going through to get there is phenomenal. I mean, it's not an easy task at all. So the interesting problem there is now that you get there, how do you start managing your yield curve? Who are you inciting to, what ads are you putting in place for what viewer at what time, so that data becomes paramount as the Nielsen classic C3 load of television gives way to DAI, the stuff that Wendell's device can do and everything else. And as DAI comes in, if that data isn't present, you need to lower the load.
Do you want to just define C3
DAI,
load?
dynamic ad insertion. What's happening is real time we're seeing a breakdown of the Nielsen ratings For example, look at Watch Disney. TV Everywhere, 3 linear channels, has been doing a bang-up thing, mostly on iPads and iTouches. But as soon as the ad load, as soon as the show gets onto the iPads, ABC is actually ripping out the C3 loads and replacing them with a replacement slate, and then rolling of ads, because it still stays linear, but about 20 or 30% of television ads, by the way, are still not cleared for internet distribution. So you got to go get rights. Everybody focused on getting the shows cleared, but they forgot to get the ads cleared, and the ads still have actors in them, and they still have contracts, and they still haven't surrendered rights. So there's a rights problem with ads. That's temporal. That'll go away. But then if the TV buyer doesn't buy anything other than broadcast, then if you leave them in, they get something for free. Nobody ever gets anything for free, so they rip that out. And under the Nielsen rules, if one ad is out of place, it doesn't count for Nielsen C3 load. So therefore, you're basically dynamically replacing the ad load within 10-second time to live. Talk about a use case that's complicated. That's the most hairy thing I've ever seen, because they don't even know where the ads are, because national ads are not tagged, only the local ads are tagged. I mean, that's the kind of transition point that the industry is going through behind the scenes. What was amazing is ABC actually talked about it. They actually, said, and here's how we're working with Nielsen. Here's how we're working with the platforms to get better data against the viewer. Because you can lower the load if you have better functionality and better data. You can get and you can manage your yield curve. You can improve the insertion. It is win-win. The consumer actually can have a better experience. You can have more engaging ads. I can prove to you consumers don't hate ads. Just look at Cosmo magazine. I mean, it's chock full. I mean, there's more ads than articles because it's relevant to the viewer at the time, all that stuff, or the reader. I think television history has to go there.
I think the smart TVs do have the capability to produce a lot of data, because they're connected to the internet, and they're kind of a platform that can embed a lot of measurement. And of course, cable and satellite companies have been collecting viewership data for some time, mainly on channel changes. And TiVo set-top boxes can collect multi-second based viewing data. And as a byproduct of enabling interactivity, the connected TVs, of course, with the permission of the viewers, can collect very granular viewing data as well. And that can be used for a lot of interesting use cases, potentially in the future, addressable advertising or dynamic inserted advertising as well.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I address one thing that was said earlier that I want to address, which is someone said that because of the carriage contracts, that the networks are not coming into the OTT space because of carriage limitations. I think you said, John.
Yes.
Actually, I would point to a watershed event that occurred in the last 6 months in the industry that I think is starting to break that trend, and that's the acquisition of Revision 3 by Discovery. And so they didn't pay a lot, and it's an interesting network.
30 million?
Yeah, 30 million. And so why did Discovery do that? Because they now have a brand that is not encumbered by traditional carriage models. So they can go program. They have rights issues with programming, but they can go down into that marketplace and start building a new brand with longer form. And the larger the screen, the longer the form of the show, to be honest. I mean, quite frankly, up on a 60-inch screen, 3-minute Cats and Pianos does not work. 30 minutes of Cats and Piano, called America's Funniest Videos, do work. But that's how you package for a casual, lean-back kind of world. So they've got to get some experience in this space, and what are they afraid of? The YouTube 100 coming up from the backside. So I think you're going to see some of the traditional cable networks building new groups that do come into on Wendell's platform that are designed around this space, that because there's not incremental carriage revenue, this is where the opportunity, and they have to figure out the new economic models. Maybe John's right. It is yoga with fees, or is it, how that works, we don't know yet.
I think the other thing you're going to see is extensions of shows. So
Absolutely.
Last year, Bravo had Top Chef, and they created a secondary show called Top Chef Last Chance Kitchen, which was aired after the show aired on TV on the internet. That sort of programming is completely unencumbered by the carriage agreements, and so you can see extensions of show brands that would be delivered through these over-the-top platforms to your 60-inch TV in your living room.
When Moby came on years ago, ESPN created something called Sports Central.
Moby TV?
Yeah, Moby TV.
The mobile video
ESPN
provider.
was actually doing a separate feed for mobile. So I think you're going to see that kind of thought process. We have to be present here. This is our franchise programming area, and we're not going to leave this area uncovered. Disney made that mistake years ago when they were at Disney Channel. They were up in the premium, and a little sort of free basic tier network called Nickelodeon slipped in behind them. And they had to bring it later on. They came in very late to come down market because of that mistake. And they finally have sort of righted that ship and righted that relationship. But they look at that kind of experience and say, I will not let my backside go uncovered. They will double down, and they will start entering on Windows and the other platforms with scale. But whether there'll be dual revenue stream, basic tier cable carriage contracts is a really uncertain kind of thing.
So one of the questions will be how much of that stuff winds up being original content versus brand extension and so on.
Yeah, and so you're going to see, think of it as AAA baseball. You know, you always want a good player drafted to the big leagues, but you may develop new talent, you may do throws and cross promotions, that's what you're really developing here is new talent, new brands, new channels meant for here, and you're working on rebuilding an economic model down here that you'll still have TV everywhere. Don't get me wrong, there's still going to be those packages, and they'll be very important. But as you enter here, this area is fairly wide open.
Cool. I want to make sure we have time for questions. Just give me a sense of how many there are. Okay, well, Mike.
Thanks, Seth. Great panel, you guys. Appreciate it. I work for Source Interlink. We own 100 brands, enthusiast brands, Motor Trend, Surfing, Powder.
Oh, we need to talk.
Very targeted stuff.
Can you guys hear him? Okay. Stand up, maybe, or talk louder.
We actually have an in-house team that we're coding apps for Google TV with Google. And we launched Motor Trend. Google TV, which became the top 3 app pretty quickly on Google TV. I have a two-part question. One, on the advertising part of it, we had an OEM that came in and bought a 3-month buy and roadblocked the entire channel. It was great for us because we had a challenge with the scale issue, which leads to my second thing. And that was a multi-platform buy, so print, tablet, we had a few apps and all that. They were not going to buy that. This is one platform. It's too small. So that leads to my second question is what's going underway as far as marketing the platform to the public at large, right? Because even to media buyers, it's kind of like, I kind of get connected to you. What is it? Can you show it to me? Even the guys that work with us are like, what is that? What is it actually? So my question really comes down to, I don't see a lot of marketing out there.
Yeah.
Wendell, somewhat. You know, if I go into Best Buy, I see a little apps on some signage. But I don't really see any aggressive marketing platform.
That's a great question. So marketing and also discoverability, right?
Traditionally, in my experience, the device manufacturers have carried the bulk of marketing. Right? So Apple, iPad, all that, kind of created these verticals and apps by their own marketing and devices. So I'm just wondering, like, where does that play out in your world?
Right. So LG is recently has put a big focus on marketing our smart TV service and a lot of the differentiated features that we have, such as the pointing remote control that really makes it easy to for users to select applications and interact with the TV. In the past, we've really focused a lot of our marketing around our 3D capabilities, where we had also a very big advantage with Cinema 3D that used very inexpensive and lightweight glasses. But we've recently put a lot of effort, and we've been running national campaigns around our smart TV service. So that's a big focus for us leading up into the holidays, and you'll probably start seeing that in print and on TV. In terms of the kind of the other part of your question around ad platforms and how applications use the platform to monetize through advertising. We did launch a advertising platform for the smart TV service and applications within the smart TV. So that was we launched that about a year ago with a partner, Yumi Networks. So they provided a lot of the ad technology, the back-end ad serving, the trafficking, and also the ad sales. And so right now, a lot of the inventory is the ads within the user interface. So there's different parts of the user interface that have ads that have interactivity enabled, that you can click and see videos or go to the websites for the advertiser or run applications that the advertiser has developed. And we've also enabled app developers and content owners to use that within their app to do in-app advertising as well. But we do see that there are different circumstances with different publishers and content owners, and so we do look at these things individually and figure out a solution that works for everybody, whether it's our own advertising platform or a third-party advertising platform that the publisher might be using across different devices and different distribution media.
Cool.
I think one of the challenges in the past with connected TV, and it's still admittedly a pretty small footprint in terms of scale, has been that a lot of the connected TVs actually weren't ever connected. And so consumers didn't know necessarily that they had that, or they didn't know that they wanted it. And I think where you're going to see a big change is when services like Starz or ESPN or Showtime or Bravo come online and start promoting within their programming that there's things that you can get through your connected TV that will drive consumer awareness, and that will benefit all of the apps that are on the platform, even vertical interest apps. If people are into skiing, they'll just through connecting through Starz or Showtime, they'll see there's a skiing focused app. So I think that will aid in consumer awareness across the board and also help with adoption of some of the vertical interest apps as well.
Actually, you're right about that. So the installed base for connected TV and smart TVs are really a function of sales and then activation, as you mentioned. And we look at the activation numbers very carefully, and over the last, I would say, 3 years, the activation rates have dramatically improved. So part of it is work that we've done to make it a much easier experience for the user to connect their TV to the internet in their home. So, for example, 3 years ago, our very first generation, what we were really calling connected TV because they didn't have an app store and they had a fixed set of services, it came with an Ethernet plug in the back of your TV. Now I happen to have Ethernet to various rooms in my house, so it wasn't that difficult to plug it in, but most people don't. So the connect rate was really low in the 20% or so range. And then the following year, we wanted to improve on that. Of course, back then, by the way, you could still buy an Ethernet or a Wi-Fi adapter for like $70 and plug it in, and you have to go buy that as a separate accessory and install it. A little more difficult. So the next year, we bundled in the Wi-Fi adapter in the box. So it didn't cost you anything extra. You just had to plug it in and activate it. So the activation rate went up considerably after that. Then last year and this year, we've been integrating in Wi-Fi right into the TV. And we've been actually doing some work as well with folks like Cisco's Linksys group to make improve the internet experience in the home and make the optimize video streaming experience. And so that's really been that's increased the activation rate to north of over 60%. So I think all of that, and there's I think there's probably room for further improvement in that, but you can see that the rates have dramatically increased over 3 years.
Great. Let's try and get a couple more in. Yeah.
Hi, I'm a TV producer. I have a production company. I work mostly in cable, and I'm always surprised whenever I start a new show. I excitedly call the digital department at the network and say, I'm really excited. I really want to be the first producer that's going to really work with you guys, and inevitably it just sort of falls away. It seems like the network budgets are really, really low for digital content, and nothing really ever comes of it. And the content that they do put up, like, let me tell you, deleted scenes are deleted for a reason. And nobody really wants to, as far as I can tell, see some, is really excited to rush to discovery.com to see a deleted scene. And so, Jodi, I was interested in your experience at Starz, the interactive stuff that you guys did put up. What worked and what didn't, and what are you finding that the viewers are responding to, or what, were there any kind of epic fails, or were there any good case studies that you guys learned from, that we can learn from?
Yeah, it's certainly a good question, and I think it's a big challenge, right? The way that I think interactivity is kind of progressing, as consumers get more involved in the, second screen or engaging behavior of a show is, first it starts with a great show, right? So when people love the show, then they want more, right? So they come back for more and then they'll consume whatever you have, right? So thinking about extra content being great, it goes hand in hand with the show actually being great first. But then, I think it goes in, and I was talking to John, I think earlier in the panel, it starts at the production process, right? It has to go hand in hand with the production of the actual, initial phases of the show. You have to have a vision for what your interactive experiences are going to be. You have to have a vision for what content is going to be secondary and create that immersive experience. I think up until now, we've thought of interactivity as kind of an afterthought, as something that takes place after you have a show and after it's successful. Now, how do I create more content so consumers can consume more? And I think that's backwards. I think we have to start thinking about these second screen experiences and these, secondary experiences, frankly, as part of the overall production process.
Cool. Good answer. Anne.
In thinking about how you develop second screen experiences and who owns what in that formula, I'm really curious, let's ignore commissioning your different levels of trust, but if networks are developing programming, and then we have set-top boxes, and then we have apps with, let's just say, iPad with a very closed ecosystem, and where they're collecting all the consumer data. Who owns that consumer data? How is it going to be split up? Because you can't do any of this personalization without it. And I think that's something I'd like to hear more about.
Good question.
Yeah, I guess I can comment on that. I mean, TV Everywhere, one of the biggest benefits for us as a programmer to introduce a TV Everywhere platform is to be able to start learning about our subscribers and understanding more about them than before when they were kind of trapped behind this operator-controlled set-top box environment. So, we see it more of a shared model, right? Because TV Everywhere, by the way, isn't just something that the programmer controls. There's operator-controlled TV Everywhere platforms as well. So we're all learning together. And we see it as a shared model, right? The subscriber certainly belongs to the operator, but the content drives the engagement. So it's a partnership, and it's something that we want to use to add value to our subscribers. And by the way, we have to do it quickly, right? It's a change in the way that we think about the way we develop platforms. If you don't use that data, if you don't leverage what you're learning, and if you choose not to learn quickly, the consumers will become very fickle and they'll move away from where you thought they were. So both the operator and the programmer have to work together to accomplish that because it's very complex.
And we do ask permission from our customers when they set up the TV through our end user license agreement to collect certain types of information that do help in personalization as well as product development and maintenance. And some of that data, particularly around interactivity when it becomes available, can be delivered back to the company that's providing that interactivity service on a non-PII or personalized personal information.
So it's anonymized.
Anonymized,
The
yes.
specifics of the person are taken out, but
That's
the
right.
data's there. That's a good question.
I think the question goes to which is the first screen. We think of the television, even the smart television, as the first screen, but really the interactivity is happening closer up, and a lot more of the attention is being paid in the mobile device. And so,
Every screen is a first screen, or that's how I look at it. Now that you have a moving audience, they're everywhere, right? We've got people in the home that are watching on an Xbox. We've got, this is the most powerful device that media has seen, in the last decade. So it's really changing the way that consumers interact with content. We consider all devices to be a potential first screen and some devices to be a potential second screen.
Yeah, I would concur with that. I mean, I think you're going to see examples of really powerful two-screen interactivity, single-screen interactivity, and then, within two-screen realm, phones and tablets both. We'll see all that. I think one point to make, though, is that with these HTML5-based services, a lot of what you're seeing either on the tablet or the TV is really just a little web page. It's a web service. So just as you can measure anything on a website, you can measure in a very fine-grained way what people are doing.
And basically also the other issue as you migrate up from the web world and the HTML5 comes out of the web world, The interesting question is, and back to some of the publisher discussion is, what are you trying to build? Are you building something that is more of a web-like an experience, heavy HTML5, heavy user interaction, heavy engagement, or are you trying to build television that's very video-centric? In my world, we're focused more in video. We're building channels that are linear. We only use HTML5 basically for user controls, changing channels and moving around. So we actually move all our HTML5 to the cloud. We don't even use the SDK, HTML5, and the rest. We're doing it on the back end. Why? Scale. I've got to have a consistent, scalable ad system with standard functionality. So the first thing you got to do when you look at this stuff is what's your objective. So the data is important, and who owns it is massive, especially if you're in the ad business. The other standpoint, this is a mobile device. The biggest problem with television advertising, it was never quantifiable. You could have the Nielsen ratings, but this is the one device the consumer takes with them. So basically, from my standpoint, if you ever want to quantify through QR codes or something like that they saw the ad and went out, the potential for this being actually a mobile device. Everybody's using it for control device. Got it. But televisions should be a fairly simple control for most people. So can you redeploy this in some interesting ways and do the one thing that television, again, I'm an ad guy, I worry about monetization on that side, is can you help the advertiser quantify the value of the return of spending dollar on your platform, because that goes with them when they go to purchase the product, take the test drive or whatever it takes. No one's using that device that way.
Okay, one more. Good question. There was one over here. No? Did you go? That's it? Are we up? We're up anyway? Okay. All right. I think we're out of time anyway. Thank this great panel. Thanks for coming.